What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the all-new 2021 Kia K5. Huge thanks to Kia for providing me here with the new K5 to review for you guys today. So about the K5, well, this replaces the Optima here in the States. It's gone by the K5 name over in South Korea for a while now, but now it's they brought the name here over to the States, and I think it correctly reflects the sharper looks here of Kia's new midsize sedan here. I think, you know, it's just such a cool looking thing. So first off, you know, a few of the dimensions have changed here. So it's now about an inch lower, it's an inch wider, and it's actually 2 inches longer on a 1.8 inch longer wheelbase. So they really stretched it out and it made it a lot more aggressive just in the dimensions. And then the styling on this thing, I think this is hands down easily the coolest looking midsize family sedan on the market today. I mean, just look at that front end. I mean, I don't know, let's start with the headlights, I guess. You have these like checkmark style LEDs with a projector beam LED bulbs in them there, and that is an optional upgrade here on this premium package on top of this GT line, which by the way is the sportier version, but still runs the same engine, does not have the faster engine. That's for the full-blown GT model, which is coming this fall. But anyway, yeah, those headlights look super cool. That grille looks really cool as well. In the GT line version, it's a little more aggressive. It's a little bit more of a narrower grille, and it doesn't extend as far out to the headlights here like you get on the EX version, which I also had a chance to sample one of those. And you can see on the EX how, you know, that grille extends out more. It's a little bit of a less aggressive mesh. It's kind of a different design, which by the way, both grille designs they say were inspired by shark skin. And so I guess when you zoom in on shark skin, that's the texture it has, and it's just so cool looking. I also just love how you have like these actual little like dive planes with the way those fog lights are integrated there and the little plastic pieces that jut out of there. It's so cool looking. Also, this hood just has so many ridges. You can see how much it like kind of first, just the way that the grille is designed, the hood actually overhangs it a little bit. It's a very muscular stance and something you see on muscle cars like Mustangs and things like that. And so to have it here on a midsize family sedan is really cool. And this whole vehicle, at least the front end styling, actually kind of reminds me of like what Dodge would do if Dodge did a front wheel drive midsize family sedan. And I mean that as a compliment. This looks so mean and aggressive, and I think looks alone are enough to sell this car, not even mentioning the interior and the driving experience and all that kind of stuff. But overall looks so good up front there. Moving on to the sides here, these 18-inch alloy wheels, and are actually wrapped in Pirelli P0 all-season tires, so a little bit of a sportier tire setup than you usually get on a midsize family sedan like this. So that's a very cool upgrade. Other things are coming down to the sides. It's really interesting how you have this chrome strip that runs through the top of the pillars here and then actually extends out and kind of gives this a fastback shape, because you can see that that line actually overshoots the rear window and goes into the trunk lid there to give this kind of a sportback appearance, kind of similar to the back end of a Kia Stinger or something like that. And that's a very unique thing that I haven't really seen on too many other vehicles. And I think it's a cool trick to kind of lengthen out this vehicle a little bit as well, and to kind of shorten the trunk lid there, which I think is really cool. Out back, you also have a sportier rear bumper here on the GT line version. You have you know, some nice taillights as well. I love how they kind of mirror the same checkmark shape, which I think they said was inspired by like a heartbeat. Whenever you see it on a graph there, it kind of has that same thing, and then you have the dotted LEDs going across the full width of the back end there, which is a really cool look, especially at night. And then in the lower part of the rear bumper there, I love how, again, how three-dimensional it is. You have those vents there, at least on this GT line version. It looks really cool, but even the regular EX has you know, some pretty nice looking rear bumpers on it as well. The only little complaint I will say that you have very nice exhaust finishers there in the lower part of the rear bumper, but they're fake. And so Kia is pulling an Audi here with fake exhaust tips in the lower part of the rear bumper, which is something other car companies are doing a little bit more these days as well. The actual exhaust tips, as you can see, are underneath the bumper there, and it just dumps out with a normal muffler setup. So that's a little unimpressive, but you know, unless you're actually getting low and underneath the car, you're not going to really notice that. And it just looks like it has some really nice exhaust tips. And so I think overall, like I said, this whole vehicle is very attractive looking, and it is just really going to stand out on the road and really catch people's attention, I think, as well. And so yeah, I think overall 10 out of 10 as far as the looks go for a midsize family sedan. All right, so start up and go for a drive. The Kia K5 here has the very cool Kia key, which has this little like trigger button here on the top of it and the buttons on the side. inside. And it's plastic. It's not as nice as the Stinger key, which is kind of wrapped in a vinyl material. It's just hard plastic. But I really like these buttons here on the side. It's very cool. This also has this new remote start that's built into the key here, and it also will do remote heating and cooling if you'd like. And so that's really great. But of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Also, if you're curious to hear about the interior in the K5, my wife and I actually just did a full in-depth interior review on the K5 here, so I will link that above. You can go check it out, and you can hear all our thoughts on both this GT line version that I'm in currently and the EX version, which is the next level up, which is a little bit more luxurious inside. All right, so setting off in the 2021 K5. So the first thing you might hear is there's some squeaking and rattling by this climate control area. Pretty bad. I don't know if that's because this is a pre-production version or not, but you're definitely going to want to wiggle on these climate controls if you're test driving one that you're considering buying, and making sure it doesn't do that, because it's kind of annoying. Otherwise, the K5 is really nice as far as visibility goes. You have very thin A-pillars, some of the thinnest out there, honestly. Nice little window here by your mirrors as well, so very easy to see forward. Great view out of the back with a nice large rear window. And so as far as visibility goes, fantastic here in the K5. Other things, you have a little bit of a higher driving position than maybe the Honda Accord, but I think it's right in line with most of the other vehicles in this segment. And so you have a very good view of the road and everything. Other things, steering has a nice natural light but still good feeling weight to the steering here, and I really like the way that feels. There's also a nice feeling brake pedal that really starts to bite down pretty quickly as soon as you start dipping into it, and so that's nice and responsive feeling. Throttle response is also very predictable, very easy. One great thing about the K5 here is it runs this 8-speed automatic transmission in all of them. And so that's great, because like the Honda Accord, which is probably one of the better driving vehicles in this segment, does have a CVT, which isn't as much fun, a little bit weirder with its feeling, a little less natural. This is a normal 8-speed automatic. It feels great, very predictable, and you know, all the shifts and everything seem to be very well done, and so I'm really happy they have a normal automatic here in this, although many of the competitors do as well. The Camry, the Mazda 6, all those still have a normal automatic, as does the Sonata, which this is kind of based on. Other things though, they all have laminated front windshields here. They're acoustically laminated, so it gives you a nice quiet ride. Now obviously we're only doing, you know, about 20-25 miles an hour here, so pretty slow speeds, but it's very quiet and just it feels very subdued. The ride is also really nice and smooth, and we're on a pretty smooth road, so we'll test it out once we're on a rougher road. But right now it really feels nice. It's such a nice, comfortable cruiser. This seat is so comfortable too, and so everything just gives you a very just comfortable and just you just feel right at home in the interior of the K5 when you first set out. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the sport driving mode, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Okay. And it moves pretty well. So it's not going to light your hair on fire or anything, but you know, it's adequate acceleration for sure. So this runs the 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that has continuously variable valve duration, which is a new technology that Hyundai and Kia are using here to make this motor a little more powerful. It has 180 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. And there wasn't any official 0 to 60 time given, but Car and Driver got 7.3 seconds in a Sonata with this identical engine. So I would guess 7.3, 7.5, something like that is likely what you're going to get. And while I only have the K5 here for a day, so I don't have a lot of in-depth impressions to give you on the engine or my fuel economy or anything like that, I will say this engine is really impressive. I already had it for a week in a Sonata, and it's a really nice torquey engine that really feels pretty eager to give you the acceleration you're looking for. But again, it's just not going to be quite as punchy as, you know, some of the top engine offerings from some of the other competitors, but that's what the GT version of the K5 is for. So if you're an enthusiast or someone who wants lots of power, that will fulfill that need with 290 horsepower from a 2.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder in that, 311 pound-feet of torque, an 8-speed dual clutch automatic that's really sporty. I actually already tested that out in the Sonata N-Line prototype I drove last year. It's a really sporty setup, 5.8 seconds 0 to 60 for that one. That's coming in November of 2020 here. So if that sounds more appealing to you, definitely wait for that one. But for the average driver, this one's going to be totally fine. And we're also on a little bit of a rougher road now. And you hear some road noise, but I think it's much better than Kia's in the past. Really feels good. But anyway, we're coming up to some corners here, and let's see how the K5 handles them here. So, diving in. All right, the tires are still protesting a little bit, but they're doing a pretty good job gripping. Like I said, they're Pirelli P0 all-season tires, which is a sportier all-season, and they're 235 wide all around on these 18-inch wheels. So, pretty good grip basis. It's kind of funny though how much they're still squealing, but it handles itself pretty well. I would say this isn't as good as the Honda Accord, so that still is the king in my book as far as handling. And I think the Camry TRD also feels a little bit better, but only the TRD version. Otherwise, the Camry feels a little bit heavier than this. This is pretty light, by the way. With a curb weight of only 3,228 pounds here for these front-wheel drive versions, you can get all-wheel drive in the K5, which is something you cannot get in the Sonata, and you can't get in many other competitors as well. Only the Legacy, it's exclusive, only the all-wheel drive in the Legacy, and then the Ultimate gives you the option of all-wheel drive as well. And the Camry will this fall as well too. And so, those are the only other options as far as that goes. But it's great they offer that. This is the front-wheel drive version here though. But yeah, I mean, it handles itself fine. I think it definitely places a priority on comfort over, flat, super sporty handling, because again, they do have that GT model, which will be the one that's going to have the sportier suspension, actually be the sporty version. This GT line has the same exact suspension as an EX or any other version of the K5 here. So even though the GT line, might make you think it has more GT stuff on it, it's certainly sportier here on the inside, and the outside looks sportier, but mechanically it's going to be identical to any other version of the K5. So you don't get those performance enhancements. You do have to go to the full-blown GT version for those sportier driving dynamics. But I don't have any complaints. For a mid-size family sedan, this is great. I think it actually feels maybe even a tiny bit sharper than the Sonata. I think just because the Sonata just felt a little bit heavier and a little bit more comfort in its setup than this does. But this still feels like it's a really nice balance of comfort and still having pretty decent performance too. And in sport mode here though, it does do a pretty good job of keeping this engine on boil so that it is ready just with a twitch of my right foot to jump in and give me the acceleration I'm looking for here. And steering might be a tiny bit heavier here in sport mode, but it's not a drastic change or anything. Well, like I said, it still feels nice regardless of what mode you're in. And but yeah, this motor has plenty of power, and I have no complaints as far as like I said, a normal daily driver. This is great. I do wish these seats hug me in place a little bit better though, because I am kind of sliding around a good bit in these, and I don't remember sliding around that much in the Camry seats, for example, or the Accords. So that is one thing I wish was a little sportier, at least here for this GT line version. But again, the full GT should address that. I do have to say though that with this car's fairly low curb weight and the sportier tire setup, I was expecting it to feel a little bit grippier and more competent in corners. I mean, Pirelli P0s aren't the best, performance all-season tires by a long shot anyway, but since they are a sportier compound, I was hoping it would have a little bit more grip, but they seem to squeal around those corners just as much as any other normal all-season would. But now I popped it back into the normal driving mode and just kind of cruising, with traffic and normal daily driver kind of commuting scenarios. This is such a comfortable vehicle. It really is. And depending on the trim, you can get even more luxuries. Like this GT line doesn't really have too many luxuries to it. And like I said, I'll go more into that in the interior review. But, the EX version has, the heated and cooled leather seats, and you have, heated steering wheel, all those types of things, which are all missing, by the way, here in this GT line. Which is kind of a bummer, because in the GT line here, it'd be kind of nice to have at least heated seats. That's not an extravagant option these days on most vehicles. But with these cloth inserts on the GT line seats, I'm sure they should breathe pretty well, and I haven't been noticing myself getting too hot here driving around on this summer day. But anyway, I'm going to hop into the EX that Kia very nicely dropped off for me as well. And so I'll hop in that one. We'll go over the safety tech in the K5s here, as well as their fuel economy and the pricing of them. Alright, so now I'm in the EX trim here, and we're merging onto the highway. See how the K5 does as a highway cruiser. And it's pretty nice. You get a little bit of wind noise, but it's really quiet. And it's been a couple of years since I drove the old Optima to compare, but I mean, as cars are passing and stuff, it's all very quiet and serene. I don't even have the stereo on. Once you turn on the stereo here, this one has that Bose center point system. It really, you know, can drown out all your surroundings if you wanted to. But one of the things, you know, so Kia has their DriveWise safety suite, which gives you all the, you know, basic stuff you get these days on modern cars. Automatic emergency braking, lane departure alert. It also has lane keeping assist, which is very active. So I tried it both in this and the GT line, and even on back roads, it'll try and steer, and it often nudges you. I'd say it's a little less obtrusive than Subaru's system, but it's fairly close. And so thankfully though, unlike Subaru, which makes you have a bright orange light on your dashboard when you turn it off, this you can just turn it off and the little icon goes away in the middle there, and you don't have any hideous lights to stare at. You can just immediately turn that off. So I gave it about 5 minutes or so, and then I got tired of having it try and steer for me, so then I turned it off, and now it's you know, just doing all the other basic stuff in the background, but isn't bothering me at all. But we're going to try out the adaptive cruise control. Now this EX premium trim that we're in here is gives you all that stuff. So it gives you, first off, we have the standard adaptive cruise control, which you do get on all the others, but this has the stop and go capability, and it also has the highway driving assist feature, which you also had on the GT line. So it's an option package you can't get on others. So I turned on all that stuff, and then I have the highway drive assist on, so it's supposed to help me with my steering. And this system, I've tested it in multiple Hyundais and Kias, and it's hit or miss depending on which one I'm in. All the Kia stuff so far, it's been pretty good. In the Hyundai Sonata though, it failed to stay in its lane around corners and stuff, so it wasn't a system you could totally rely on all the time. And this though, so far, it seems to be doing pretty well. So Honda's system has been one of the ones I've enjoyed the most, because that'll do like really aggressive steering around some of the sweeping bends we have here on highways in western Pennsylvania. Obviously, if you're on very straight roads most of the time, it'll do a totally perfect job in most systems of keeping you in your lane. But this one's doing a very good job. I just lightly have my hands resting on the wheel here. I'm letting it do all the steering, and it's doing a very good job. So I'm pretty impressed. You know, it just handled that corner just fine. These aren't super tight bends here, but you know, a little tighter than your average, you know, freeway bends often are, and it's doing a really good job. Let's see here. So it will kind of get a little bit close to the line, and then it'll pull itself back in. So this system, maybe they have been, you know, refining it and improving it since last year in the Sonata, where I was a little bit disappointed in it. And this, it seems to be really good. And this is definitely superior to like Toyota's Lane Trace Assist, which barely does anything whenever you're, you know, trying to stay in your lanes. This actually does some really active steering, and I think this is pretty close to being right up there with Honda's system of actually being able to do some legitimate steering for you. And that's really nice, because it does take a lot of the fatigue off of you whenever you're, you know, driving on long highway drives. You know, it is nice to, obviously you're still driving yourself, you still have to do it. It's not autonomous or anything, but you know, just the little bit less muscle that you have to put into constantly steering with this kind of helping you out and guiding you around those bends, I think it does a really good job. And so overall, I'm very impressed with that. So that passes so far. Obviously, I don't have a long time. I'd like to have one of these for a week to do some more extensive testing, but in my little bit of highway driving there, it did do well. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to be in my normal stop and go traffic or anything to really test that much on the highway. But yeah, I'm sure that that works pretty well. It's a pretty simple thing. It just detects the car in front of you going and will resume automatically. A lot of adaptive cruise control systems have done that for a couple of years now. And that'll be really nice if you do, you know, sit and stop and go traffic and things like that. The other thing though with these adaptive cruise systems is that, you know, they still, even at their closest following distance, do leave a little bit more of a gap than most human drivers. So you will notice that it's usually enough space for other people to still cut in front of you and stuff, which can maybe be a little bit annoying. You might want to take over on your own if you're, you know, in an area where there's, you know, people in close quarters with you all the time. But it's really great, again, for all the relaxed, normal kind of driving you're going to be doing here in the K5. I think all the safety tech is really good. It also has blind spot monitoring, backup cameras, you know, all that type of stuff as well, like you would expect out of a car these days. So the last two things to mention here are the fuel economy and the pricing in the K5. So first off, fuel economy here, on most of the trims, it's going to be 27 mpg in the city, 37 on the highway, and 31 combined. Now, I've, you know, only driven these vehicles over the course of this afternoon, but I've been getting, even with my, you know, fairly aggressive driving on the back road and the other one earlier, and now just cruising around in this one, I've been averaging 25 miles to the gallon. But again, I'm not driving more than a few dozen miles here and a few dozen miles there. So not a real significant fuel economy rating. But for what it's worth, the accumulated information on this EX that I'm in currently, whoever didn't reset the trip odometer so far with all the highway driving they did to get to my house and stuff, over 1,300 miles, this vehicle has been doing 36.6 mpg. So basically it's been hitting that highway estimate of 37. And the other GT line version, actually, before I started romping on it, was sitting with about 2,000 miles on its trip odometer. It was sitting at just around 40 mpg. So it seems like these actually will overperform the EPA estimates, again, depending on the type of driving you're doing. I'm assuming that's mostly just straight highway cruise control to get 40 mpg out of one of these. But it does show you the potential you can get here as far as fuel economy in the K5, and it should be very good in that regard. So the last thing to mention here is the pricing in the K5. So all the K5s start at $24,455 for their starting MSRP, and that's again before options, and if you want all-wheel drive, that's extra, all that type of stuff. But so that is a pretty aggressive starting price. That's actually about $80 less than the Sonata's base price, which is also like the value leader. And the important thing between these two is the Sonata still gives you a naturally aspirated four-cylinder that has roughly the same power, but you don't get that turbo punch in the base Sonatas. You actually have to go up to a higher, I think it's like a $28,000 Sonata in order to get that turbo motor that you get here standard in the $24.5 roughly $1,000 K5. So if you're after that turbo motor and you want to make sure you're at a nice low price point, the K5 could win out in that alone. It's also about $500 cheaper starting over an Accord, and about $900 cheaper starting than a Camry. So it definitely comes in nice and affordable, and you aren't making any sacrifices. Like I mentioned in the interior review, I mean, the interior in this is really at the top of the pack as far as how nice it is, and I am just super impressed with that. The ride is really great and comfortable. Yes, it's not as sporty as an Accord, but are most people going to care in their midsize sedan? Probably not. If you do care, wait until November for a GT version. That'll most likely have much better handling, much better power. All that type of stuff is going to be improved, and you're actually going to have more power than you get out of the Accord. It's a little less than the Camry as far as horsepower, but you do have more torque than the Camry, since the Camry still just runs a V6 and its top trims. But so that's going to be a very exciting option. I'm hoping to get behind the wheel of one of those GT versions here sometime this fall. But in the meantime, I think this is still a very impressive vehicle, and as tested, so the GT line version that I was in had an extra option package on top of it, but they started around $25,500, I believe, and then that one that I was driving around was about 28 and change, I think 28,200 or something for that GT line version. Now this EX version, they start at about $28,000 to $29,000, but then this one also has an extra premium package on top of it, which gives you the panoramic moonroof, and oddly, even the heated steering wheel isn't until you get up to this extra package. So you can bundle it in with other packages and stuff, but it's kind of strange that you have to go up even beyond, even in the top EX trim, you got to go and add a package on in order to get a heated steering wheel. You'd think they'd have it as standard at that point. But anyway, so this one, as tested, is about $32,355. So but even at 32.5, I mean, that is still way under. I mean, if you look at some of the top trims of the competitors, they kind of force you into that top engine option. But I mean, considering you have like fully loaded Accords and Camrys and stuff that will be a little bit more expensive than that, I still think the value is so strong here in the K5. And then even whenever you throw the whole price thing out the window and you just look at this and you just sit in this, comparing it to a fully loaded Camry and a fully loaded Accord, I think it's pretty clear the K5 has an advantage right now, especially as far as the interior goes, but also just with all the other stuff. Like I said, the very exciting styling, which may be polarizing. Maybe some people don't like that. That's a subjective thing. But even if you don't, like I said, it's just a really soft, smooth, comfortable ride. It's nice and quiet. It's great on the highway. It has one of the most advanced safety systems. All those things combine to really make the K5 very, very appealing, and I'm sure they're going to sell tons of these things because I do love the direction Kia is heading. I'm so excited to watch both them and Hyundai. The new Sonata is also very impressive, and they both have just really improved the game, I think, and really, been very strong competitors for all the other mainstays out there that have been out for a few years that aren't quite as fresh as this. But I think these really take it to the next level as far as what you get in a mid-sized family sedan. It's really impressive. And so yeah, that's all my thoughts here on the Kia K5. Let me know your thoughts on the K5 in the comments below. Huge thanks to Kia for sending not just the EX, but also that GT line for me to compare. That was really cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that as well. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.